I've had two periods of running in my life that were very different. The first one started 6 years ago and ended 2 years after that. In this period, I was an unlicensed runner, which was characterized by my short-term results and injuries. The first year went well. I kept running more and I kept getting fitter, eventually hitting a sub 20-minute 5K and a sub 45-minute 10K. But like all unlicensed runners, it came to an end. I got injured, and for the next whole year, I spent my time bouncing in and out of different injuries, until I eventually accumulated so many that I was forced to quit. This is the story of too many runners. They are left broken and frustrated by a sport that promised them health. 2 years passed, and this is where my second journey with running began. As a licensed runner, I tried to return to running many times during that 2 year break, but every time I tried, my injuries would flare up again. It forced me to develop what I call the Swift running model, which is what took me from an injury-riddled unlicensed runner to a pain-free licensed runner. Now, 2 years after picking up running again, I'm pain-free, and I haven't had a single injury the past 2 years. I'm back to running sub 20-minute 5Ks, and most importantly, I enjoy running again. Getting injured isn't random bad luck, it's predictable consequences of operating without proper credentials. The reason why you keep getting injured, even though you're trying your hardest to stay healthy, is because you're an unlicensed runner trying to operate like a licensed one. The Swift running model to make you a licensed runner can be broken down into three major parts: tissue tolerance, running technique, and Swift running. Tissue tolerance to get you injury free, running technique to keep you injury free, and Swift running to get you fit. You can imagine them in a triangle like you see here. Tissue tolerance and running technique are at the base of the pyramid because if you aren't injury free, there's no point in attempting to run. You'll just end up more injured. You need to build a foundation first, and that foundation is your tissue tolerance and your running technique. Building up this foundation is the biggest difference between licensed and unlicensed runners. Imagine you're in a video game. Your total health bar is your tissue tolerance. It's how much damage you can take before you die, or in this case, get injured. And your running technique determines how much damage each step does when you're running. So let's say you have a total health bar with 10,000 HP, health points. If your running technique sucks, you'll be doing 10 damage to yourself for every step you take, which means you can run 1,000 steps before you get injured. But if you have great running technique, you'll only be doing 1 damage per step, so you'll be able to take 10,000 steps before injuring yourself. Now this is of course a simplified model, but it's easy to see that you need to focus on improving both your HP, your tissue tolerance, but also how much damage you take from running, aka your running technique. Because even with the best running technique in the world, you won't get far if your total HP is 100, and even an incredible amount of HP will get drained quickly if your running technique sucks. So let's talk about how to build tissue tolerance. There are three components to building up your tissue tolerance: mobility, supporting muscles, and high pressure training. You may notice that none of these include what people normally associate with rehab, like stretching, foam rolling, massages, chiropractic adjustments, icing, compression, etc. And that's because none of the normal rehab fixes the underlying problem. They're all just short-term solutions that give you some minor pain relief that you keep coming back to, so you can get your extra chiropractic adjustment or your massage or etc. So they can earn money off you. Some of these may be better at providing short-term pain relief than training your mobility, your supportive muscles, and doing high-pressure training, but in the long term, they won't improve your tissue tolerance at all, meaning you'll get injured again. Because, again, they don't aim to fix the underlying problem, and that problem is weakness. A good example of this is flexibility versus mobility. Flexibility is just the ability to reach a certain positions. If you want great tissue tolerance, you need to be strong in those positions as well. Strength is not enough, flexibility is not enough. You need mobility, which is when you're strong in the most stretched positions. Tendons and muscles are shown to get stronger and grow more if you train through the entire range of motion, especially at their most stretched positions. That means deep squats build more tissue tolerance than if you only squat to 90 degrees, and they will therefore decrease your risk of getting injured, and they'll also be better at healing your injuries. Now you might think that it's easy for me to tell you to do all these mobility exercises or train the supporting muscles or do high pressure training, but since you're injured, you can't actually do those exercises. And I get that because I was injured as well. And that's where the rest for zero versus never zero principle comes in. I had 2 years where I just rested my knees because they were in pain, and they didn't get any better throughout those 2 years. But when I followed the never zero principle, I healed my knees in 2 months. Rest will keep you weak and fragile. If you just keep resting, your muscles, tendons, and ligaments will atrophy, which will make it more and more difficult for you to return to running without pain. Many mistakenly think rest will heal their injuries because they fail to make this distinction between the two types of injuries: acute injuries versus chronic injuries. Acute injuries are often associated with trauma, like falling and hitting your knee on the ground, for example. The way to heal acute injuries is to just let them rest. But resting won't work with chronic injuries because by definition, chronic injuries won't disappear if you just rest. They're chronic, and just resting will actually make chronic injuries worse. Let's say you, for example, have chronic knee pain. If you only rest, then the muscles surrounding your knee, like the quads, hamstrings, calves, etc., will atrophy and get smaller and weaker. This will only make your knees weaker and more prone to injury. The tendons and ligaments in the knee will also get weaker since you're not training them, and you'll have a lack of blood flowing to the knee because you're not using it. And blood is essential for healing, so if you restrict blood flow, I can assure you that you won't heal your knees. You don't need rest because you're never at zero level of ability. There's always a way to start strengthening a body part by regressing the exercises, which is why all exercises inside Swift running we use to build tissue tolerance can be regressed, so anyone can start doing them, no matter the starting point. It's how I started squatting despite having knee pain, it's how I started deadlifting despite having back pain, and it's how I've healed all my injuries. Now, when people have developed their tissue tolerance, they usually make the mistake of starting to run more before they run better, and they therefore re-injure themselves. Improving my running technique is how I've stayed injury-free the past 2 years, despite being an injury-prone person who has previously dealt with 5 different injuries. Now, to improve your running technique, there are 2 things you need to know. You need to learn the actual running techniques, and then when you implement those, you need to do so with the guiding principle of treating running like dancing. The running techniques are how you need to run, but relaxing and treating running like dancing is how you actually perform those techniques in an efficient manner. And the reason why you have to do this is because only a fraction of the energy needed to run comes from your muscle. Much of it comes from the elastic return from your tendons, ligaments, and fascia. This is something that you can feel for yourself. If you, for example, like me in this video, start out by jumping fast, doing fast jumps, and then you slowly slow down the pace of the jumps, like you can see I'm doing here. And what you'll notice when you do this is that it's way harder to do the slower jumps than it actually is to do the fast jumps, which doesn't really make sense because you're jumping faster. Why wouldn't that be tougher? And the reason why it isn't tougher, and the reason why slow jumps are tougher, is because the elastic return from when you hit the ground and then bounce up immediately after is way greater than if you hit the ground and then you wait for a little bit and then you bounce up again. Because in the second one, you'll have to use your muscles way more, because in the first one, you'll get a lot of elastic return as you hit the ground and then you bounce up immediately again. And the same happens when you're running. And if you tense up, then you won't be utilizing the elastic return as well when you're running, which is why how efficient you are increases with how relaxed you are. When I started to improve my running technique, I had 6 months where I barely progressed. That was because I was tensing up and trying to do everything mechanically. Within the first 7 days of relaxing more, I decreased my 5K time by a whole minute. In just 7 days, I decreased my 5K time by 1 minute. When you've built up a foundation of tissue tolerance and running technique, it's time to add in Swift running so you can begin to improve your fitness. And this time you won't get injured because of the foundation that's built. I run for 1/10 the amount I did 4 years ago, and I'm fitter than I was then. I credit the way I structure my running for a big part of this. Most people try to do slow, long distance running, and it works. It really does work. You can get incredibly fit by running like that. But unfortunately, most people quit before they reach that. And that's not because they're lazy or undisciplined. It's simply because that style of running doesn't fit them. If running for you is boring, takes too much time, fatigues you too much, then I believe Swift running is the solution. The secret to Swift running isn't in the individual runs you do. It's in how you program the individual runs. Your body needs to be challenged, but it also needs to recover. This is why a Swift running program follows your natural stress recovery cycle, so you can improve your fitness with as little time spent on cardio as possible. This is a weekly cycle, but there's another even more important cycle we need to incorporate in our Swift running program. That is the yearly cycle. Periodizing my training is a crucial tool for me because I focus on building both muscle and fitness. And I don't want running to be the single purpose of my life. I don't want my life to revolve around running. I want to do many more things with my body than just run. And if you're the same way and you're focused on building fitness plus some other training modality or sport, then it will be useful for you too. The traditional way of combining fitness and building muscle or some other sport is to split it up 50-50 during the week. A classic one is running 3 days a week and lifting weights 3 days a week. The problem with this is that you plateau quickly. It's way harder to learn Spanish and Japanese at the same time than if you just focus on one of the two. And this is the Swift running model. It's how I'm gonna take 100 people to a sub 20-minute 5K without injuring themselves by the end of the year. If you struggle with anything we mentioned today, I'd love to help you implement this. So you can DM me on X/Twitter at AskerSR, or just search for my name, Asker Jørgensen. Whether you want help with healing your injuries, preventing injuries, building fitness, etc., whatever you want. But the main goal is to get your body moving and feeling well while building fitness in a time efficient manner.